Hi, you're listening to Boggy Talk, Faith Conversations in the Mud, a resource of Church on Bayshore.
Hey, welcome to Boggy Talk. Thanks for tuning in. We hope you're doing well because I think we're doing well. You doing all right?
I think, all right.
Are
you doing all right?
Sorry, my voice is changing.
Yeah, I am doing great. Yeah, I'm doing great. It's got a little 3-day weekend in. I had to do a little bit of study yesterday, but beyond that,
are our kids ever going to stay in school a full week?
Seriously. Remember last week when it was like
right.
no school on Tuesday, and then it was almost no school on Friday.
Yep.
What's up with the weather?
Man, this is unusual for January. This is like March weather, I feel like.
But didn't it happen last year too? Remember, like we couldn't go back to school. Like they were supposed to go back to school.
I feel like
that was after spring break. It was after spring break.
Right. Oh, and yes. And then we were all a little.
You think teachers are doing this? They're making these
That's
storms
right. They're
come in.
praying for this. They're like, it was an extra day. No, I think teachers are ready
I don't
mostly.
know. Niceville, though, wasn't too bad. It was like there's a little hedge of protection around Niceville.
Yeah, there you go. We're going to talk about that phrase later on.
Yeah.
So, hey, why don't we just go ahead and dive in?
Are you good? I didn't ask you.
Oh, sorry.
You said, and I said yes.
We're doing fine. Yeah, okay. Last week I was.
You said you were doing fine.
Yeah, doing fine.
You said you
doing fine. Was in
well.
class last week.
Bad.
You know, the January crud hit our house, and it's passed through, thankfully, and we're doing all right now. This is good. You know,
working on your doctorate.
Y'all had a good anniversary weekend.
Apparently, on Boggy Talk one time, I said, "What's that like not having a doctorate to you?"
You did say that.
A couple people won't let me live that down. So.
Yeah, you see what I have to live with.
We don't live together, just for clarity.
Right. Work.
Work. Okay.
Did y'all have a good anniversary?
Yes,
now that you caught up in,
we did. We're married just as long as you guys now. So, well, not really because we're still 7 days
minus a week, but
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was good.
Well, cool. Well, hey, why don't we just?
I did something awesome.
You did. To be determined.
Whatever it was.
So we are following up today something that was addressed just kind of slightly, briefly. I wouldn't say slightly, but briefly in a sermon last week.
Yeah, a little bit this week too. Yeah.
And just coming on the heels of Philippians chapter 1. I mean, I love the book of Philippians.
Me too, man.
And I know you're studying ahead, and several times you've commented about how excited you are for some of the coming weeks as we get into chapter 1, chapter 2. Philippians is such a great book. Great letter that Paul writes. And but as we're beginning Philippians chapter 1, Paul is writing, saying to live as Christ, to die as gain. And he's writing this from a place of suffering. Mm-hmm. And so today we thought it was appropriate really to talk about suffering and to talk about suffering in the gospel. And how do we suffer? Why do we suffer? And what do we do in response to suffering? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so as we continue on in Philippians in the next few weeks, it actually really gets into that because Paul begins to say, talk about what's happened to him, and he's talking about his imprisonment, and he's saying how it's been used to advance the gospel. And so I think I think that what we need to address is there is, I don't know if as much anymore, but there definitely is a group, and there has been a lot of people who just don't talk about this, suffering being a part of God's plan, right, for us. And so I think the reason why, I'm simplifying this, we typically, stir up the waters just enough to get them boggy here, is it is very hard for people who've grown up in a country where A plus B equals C in terms of success and prosperity to really understand that we're not always moving forward. We're not always advancing. And that can be okay in God's eyes, right? So I think that's part of it. I think there's just this tension that we have. And I think it's a huge piece of spiritual growth personally.
Absolutely. And I think too, some of the questions around suffering do become a little bit, I think, more philosophical when you start talking about them, and where Scripture gives us clarity as to our response to suffering, and that we suffer because of there's suffering in this world because of sin. That in the fall, all of creation was subject to futility, is what Scripture says. And I think a lot of times our conversations go immediately to, well, why and who caused the suffering,
right?
And that's, while that's, we can talk about that and you can address that, it's ultimately doesn't necessarily address but I am suffering, so what do I do and how do I respond to that?
Yeah. I told people, I think everybody's okay with the big picture answer. The big picture answer from the Bible, the big picture answer is God created the world and there's sin in the world. It's not permanent, but it is a consequence of this living in a fallen world. And God is going to take that away. I think most people are okay with like that. And the alternative is never existing. So, okay. But the problem I think we have is the specifics. Like, okay, but then this kid got this disease and this happened to this woman from this man, and this nation is going through this right now. Like this people group, like I think it's like, why did that specific thing happen? And the truth is we don't know specifically.
Yeah, because I think when you talk about, like you're saying, the acute, like we don't know why. But I mean, Scripture says that, it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous.
Did you call me cute, or what did you say?
Acute.
Oh, okay.
You acute.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is right. Like we don't and if we did, like who's known the mind of God, like we can't say this is the definitive reason.
Right.
Like I go back to when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans, there were groups of people
who said George Bush doesn't like black people.
That's Kanye.
Yeah.
I remember watching that.
Okay, I'm glad you got that reference.
I did.
Yeah,
but there were groups of people who were saying that Hurricane Katrina was God's righteous judgment on a sinful city.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that
the French Quarter was fine.
Yeah, the part where the tourists go to do all the simple things really wasn't harmed.
Right.
And also, if that was also the case, that should happen to every city, including cities like Niceville. Like
sound like Paul Washer right now.
I know. Like that should happen everywhere. So we can't trying to prescribe why this, what we have to do is understand the bigger picture of God's redemptive plan in all of it, and how it all is redeemed.
Yeah, and I like what Paul's saying. He's saying, I just want you to know that what has happened to me has served to advance the gospel. He is not saying like God threw me in prison. And so what I say typically when I preach on suffering is like God certainly causes suffering to happen. You know what I mean? Like, and so he definitely allows it. Job, right? Like Satan is the one that's initiating all that, right? But God's sovereign. I know he is. He's allowing Satan to do that. And so like nothing happens that God doesn't know and that God doesn't permit. I mean, that's just reality. But it doesn't mean he's the initiator of the evil. And again, you got to get to the big picture. But then when that affects us directly, it's very hard. And Paul just recognizes, and I think he articulates this in Romans, all things work together for the good to those who serve him and are called according to his purpose. So he's saying like ultimately God is able to take all these things, whatever that may be, and work it for your good. And again, I think we're okay with that big picture, but we struggle with it on a specific acute.
Yeah, in an acute way, because I think sometimes we're trying to reconcile like our submission to God and trust in his power and his authority with what's happening. Yeah. And so I think what happens a lot of times is when suffering happens, we say, well, was this God's plan or God's will for this to happen? And I think that's a hard question to answer because we're not God. And so I'll use an example. We had friends who adopted a child with special needs, and knowing that his prognosis was not but they were committed to love him and care for him, and they did so well until he passed away. And I think, would you look at them and say, well, it was God's plan for this child to suffer? Right. Well, if God's plan was when he created was for man and for mankind to walk with him, and that plan mankind rebelled against that. Yes. And so there are consequences in our suffering, though sometimes I do believe our suffering may be the cause of a specific sin in our own lives.
You're right.
It is also just the result of sin.
Right.
Blanket across the world.
Yes.
There could be a time when someone is sick and it's God, like using that as discipline in their lives. And there's other times when it's just you are sick. You have it. It just it is. But God's redemptive plan, this is Jesus came for redemption of mankind, and that redemption is ultimately salvation of our souls. But also, if you go to the end of the story in Revelation, he says, "Behold, I am coming. I will make all things new. Everything will be in heaven as it should have been." in creation. And so
Right.
then, the new heavens and the new earth. And so I think I'm getting a little bit into the hope in suffering. But basically the hope in suffering is that no matter what in suffering, we have the Lord. And Paul writes to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So in our suffering, he is with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many thoughts floating through my mind right now. So they're like, this has been floating.
Little clouds.
Yeah, they are. I think you would say, well, why did God have to do it that way? And it's like, you don't understand human nature then, because we are not created if there's not sin. Like, that's the alternative. God could create us and there'd be sin or not, because we're not God. So that's the point. He's holy. He's the only one who's holy. He's set apart. But he chose to create us and wants to redeem us and wants us to see his goodness for all of eternity. And he's doing that. And so, and we see him working that redemption out now. And so, even when they asked Jesus, was this man born blind because, he what he did or his parents did? And Jesus sees it from the divine perspective. And he says, he was born blind so that my glory might come in it. Now, that doesn't mean he was born blind and suffered so that very thing can happen in that moment, that God would put him through that. But it means that God used it in that way, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's the recognition of that. And so when we hear people give a testimony about suffering being a good thing, they're like, look, God allowed me to go through this, and it brought me to see him, right? And so, I know from an American prosperity perspective, it is so hard to say that's good. But would you rather never suffer and go straight to hell, or suffer having been brought to Jesus? And so, we got to think about that. And so, I think that's hard to grasp, but reality is, I would rather, I forget though, rather go into, hell crippled than there was a person who was handicapped. So I'd rather go into heaven. Sorry.
I was about to say,
crippled.
I'm not sure where this quote's going.
Rather go into heaven crippled than hell on 2 feet, so.
Agree. Well, I think so much of it is I don't think anyone should pursue suffering.
No.
But
the stigmata.
We should not pursue it. But at the same time, we do have to recognize that for us, we do try to run from suffering.
Right.
And I think particularly in our culture where...
And affliction's probably a better word, right?
Right. Affliction. Yeah.
Trial.
In our culture...
Suffering seems so heavy.
Yeah,
right?
A trial. In our culture, we typically have means to escape some suffering and some trial.
Medicate is what I said.
And there's other cultures where suffering, I think, is just it's just reality a little bit more.
It is.
I think if you go to the root of Buddhism was formed out of this the value, I saw suffering and all of life is suffering, so I'm going to try to escape suffering, and to escape suffering I'm going to cease to exist. And I really think if we were to examine sometimes how we approach Christianity, we think as Christians, we think a little bit more like Buddhists than Christians.
Like escaping,
Jesus should help me escape.
Yeah, you're right.
Escape suffering and avoid, rather than persevere in it and through it and be with me. So I would just, challenge us in that thought. Again, not saying we should pursue it, but at the same time, look at how God can use it in his redemptive purposes. So I guess if we were to give some advice to someone in affliction or suffering, how to persevere, what would you say? Hey, how do I honor God in suffering?
Well, I think the recognition that, it's hard. We've talked about this before, and leaning on other people. And it's okay to say, I was meeting with somebody last week and they're just going through, just a challenging season. And I was like, yeah, it's really challenging. What you're saying is really challenging. And I feel like they were acknowledging that for the first time, and it was freeing for them. And so, it was good for me to just kind of be like, yeah, you need to have somebody who you can be like, this is tough, with. There's scriptural evidence of that. That's where the church comes in handy. So I think that's important. I think being in the Word, kind of staying calibrated, remember your identity, being heavenly minded. You know what I mean? I think that's important. If it's a mental suffering, getting help, just like physical. I mean, so like physically, like if you're physically suffering, like it's okay to get physical help. And if you're mentally suffering, it's okay to get mental help. Like obviously keeping the gospel central. And what other practical things would you say?
I agree with that, and I think you need people around you who are going to press you into the truth more and more and more and more. Who are going to listen to you and just be that place where who acknowledge it's hard, but also who are going to exhort you with truth. And remind you. I mean, God uses people to remind us of His presence all the time, and so that's a key. And then also just looking for the opportunities in it that God may, the opportunities. One, just like that God may present you with that to show His love to you and to others, that you may witness. That this life isn't all there is. This physical life, like we are created for eternity, and that's ultimately where our hope is.
Yeah, it really gives you that perspective that is true. That man, this is not my home. There's something better. Jesus is everything. Like it really does give you that. And I in Reason for God by Tim Keller, he actually devotes a chapter to this. The book is about like common objections to the faith. And he says in there, and I mean, it really changed my perspective on this, and not changed my perspective, but gave me the ability to articulate this.
Yeah.
He said, Christianity does not have all the answers to suffering. The Bible, that is. But it does tell you what the answer cannot be. The answer cannot be in Christ that God is absent from our suffering, telling us to endure it because it's worth it. Christianity tells us, the cross tells us, it is that much worth it to God.
Yeah.
That He would suffer for what's in store.
Yeah.
And what great hope. And if you don't believe that, you should want that to be true.
Yeah. The suffering that Jesus endured on the cross ultimately shows us there is hope beyond our present affliction.
It was it was worth that much to Him. The joy that was set before Him, Hebrews 12. We'll be there in Philippians 2 next.
That's a verse of a song we sing when we sing God, You're So Good. The last verse of that song is, and should this life bring suffering, I should say, and when this life brings suffering,
yes, that's right.
Lord, I will remember what Calvary has purchased for me, both now and forever. Every time we sing that song, like going into that verse,
my
I'm
wife's
like,
favorite worship song. I think
that it's just truth. We got to sing the truth. So
that
all right,
and bringing in the sheaves.
Bringing in the sheaves. I don't know the tune of that actually.
All right, man. We spent more time than I thought we would, but that's okay.
That's good. That's all right.
It's a heavy topic.
That is. And so if you've got questions or follow up on that, just let us know. So we are going to move into kind of questions and to some questions, and this one really kind of builds off of that. So this comes from a listener. Thank you, listener. Hey, we've heard you say talk about the saying hedge of protection. I've heard people in my life who've said that, and I can't really explain why it's not. Can you explain why it's not biblical? Because as we've mentioned, so there we go. So that's the question. So I would say
talk about that.
I think we've mentioned it in passing, kind of poking fun at like
hedge
praying.
of protection.
So I know
say traveling mercies.
Traveling mercies. So hedge. I would say I wouldn't go as far, and maybe if I did, I should recant. That I wouldn't say it's not biblical, but the premise of praying
like
for
a grass hedge.
Yeah, I mean, I think of I'm a Georgia fan, so when you say the hedges, I immediately think of between the hedges, and the football field. But it comes, probably the best reference for this is in the book of Job, where Satan goes to Job and says, Job is only following you because you have put a hedge around him. That's kind of where the reference comes from. I think probably it's more of an application because usually when we hear this,
is it though, or is it a Southern thing where they just talk about hedges?
Hedges. I would say it's probably more of like people pray. Usually, what I recall hearing this prayed just growing up in church, it's just like, hey, we got.
I just like see people.
Jim and Sue, and they're going on vacation, so Lord, put a hedge of protection around them as they're going.
Or if I send my kids to school, right, I just pray a hedge of protection around them.
So I think it is some vernacular.
A grassy bush around
No, that's all I can picture is grass and like big shrubs. So is it... No, we should pray for protection. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. No hedges. I want a wall.
Protection's fine.
Can I get?
Who needs a hedge when you have Jesus?
That's right.
I just want a Jesus of protection.
Can I get some stones, not hedges?
Maybe the angels, and like at the hedges of the
yeah. But I think so that's probably the best explanation for it. And
you said yeah.
Because we're bringing out my southern roots.
Hedges.
Come on.
Well. So Jesus taught us how to pray, right?
Yeah, he did
in the Lord's Prayer, right?
Prayer.
And he says pray like this, deliver us
from,
lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. So I mean, so we want God to not allow us to be led into temptation, right? But to deliver us from evil. So we want God's protection. So I certainly, there is nothing wrong, as you said, with like, hey, God, protect us in this, and I think a recognition of that is how quickly we are inclined to fall, right? Like to be led into temptation.
Yeah.
I think probably the problem, and why we poke fun of it, is like so many people just like pray without really knowing God's word, right? And they're just like, God, protect, give us a hedge of protection and travel in mercies. Like, but they're not like actually, and I'm not, it's not evil. I'm just saying like, they're not actually like seeking to live their life for the Lord. And so they just want like God to make sure they're like safe, right? Yeah. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. So, so that's why I think we poke fun, not of the prayer, but at just the superficialness of a lot of Christianity.
Right.
So maybe that's just kind of like, what is it called whenever you shoot and there's shrapnel? The shrapnel.
I was like, the shrapnel. Did this and I was fireworks.
The shrapnel.
You did his motion.
The shrapnel of our jokes on that culture hit hedge of protection and other.
Yeah, I agree. Because
is that a colloquialism?
Colloquial, vernacular, colloquialism.
Yeah.
And I think again, like I've got a 16-year-old driving. I pray for his protection as he's driving.
Any hedges?
I don't pray hedges, but I do pray for protection. I mean, so again, it comes down to like
a colloquialism. It's a word or phrase that is not formal or literary. Typically, one used in ordinary or familiar conversation.
There you go, and it is ordinary.
Heart of hearts. Also, I hear you say that.
I say my heart of hearts.
What does that mean?
Deep
That's
down.
a scriptural thing,
deep
right?
Down.
We should come up with a list of like kind of scriptural statements
in your heart of hearts.
In your heart of hearts.
Deep
hedge of protection.
Down. That's deep,
traveling mercies.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. So next question is this.
Rise and build.
Rise and build. What is that from?
It's like what every church does when they do a capital campaign.
Oh, funny. Rise and
it's like,
build.
that's not what that scriptures talk about.
Like, yeah. Anyway.
Enlarge my territory.
No, that's Jabez. Yep. All right. So you mentioned Sunday ago that churches that have groups that are focused on interest and not the Bible, and how that wasn't sufficient.
Yes,
I agree with you. However, how do we navigate the tension of needing to point everyone to maturity in Christ in Bible study with the fact that people just sometimes aren't interested in that, but may come to pickleball group or book club? So that's a great question.
It is a great question.
Really, I say it's a both and in this. This would be my quick answer. I think, and since pickleball was in this question, I'm going to use a specific group as an example. So we have a young adult life group that Alec Ammons and Ashley, his wife, and Lucas Comer lead, our student and kids minister. And they meet every Thursday night to study the Bible. And that's what they do when they meet on Thursday. Now, that group, also, a lot of them love to play pickleball. And so on Tuesdays, because they're young adults and most of them don't have kids, they've got a little more liberty in their schedule. They play pickleball, and they play pickleball on Tuesdays, and they call it Pickleball Tuesdays. And they have invited people who may not come to Bible study to that and developed relationships with them. And some of those people, not all, some of those people have begun to come to the Bible study. But the Bible study is the Bible study. It is that we're not, it's, there's fellowship time in that. And so it's a both and, if you were starting with, not everyone who's going to come to some kind of activity is going to make that transition into a Bible study or life group or whatever that context is, but some are. And so I think it's a both and situation here.
Yeah, I think maybe I could have been more clear in the sermon. My point was like, there are churches that are like, count every group, like that. Yeah. That's, like
they have maybe a few that study the Bible and a few that are like, we're the, I don't know what kind of club. We're almost like a club.
Right.
And they count that as a life
whatever
group.
It might be. We're the I don't want to offend. Yeah. I want to be an equal opportunity offender. And if I pick one or two, I'm not.
Yeah.
And so like, they're just okay with like, it stays there, right? Because we have people that come to worship. We have people that come to groups and like, no. So like, yes, absolutely. As a support to fellowship, right? Like as an outreach, certainly, yeah, do whatever. Like it's fine, but like if we're not really drawing in to learn the word together, we're really stopping short. If we're not really taking communion together, if we're not, what I mean? Like we are. And so, and I would say that that's infiltrated in that even in church worship, we're not like, always studying the Bible. I know this is seems more problematic, but it's just about getting people to gather, right? And so like I kind of poke fun sometimes. Like I think we have something like this up in our wall on our wall, but we have like it more. But it'd be like gather, I think that's here on our campus too. But it's like, well, that becomes very arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
Because
what are you gathering around and what are you doing? Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so
yeah. It is what, I think if a church is using I'll just say an interest group or a club type approach to life group or small group. If there's a progression, like this is how we're going to gather people who can potentially be interested. And then, I mean, that is a common strategy on the mission field, like in places where there's not churches. And then you gather this group and then you look for the person of peace. And then like, that's not a bad strategy if there's strategy. If it's just, we're doing this to...
And I do think what becomes problematic too is like, then we begin to form all these interest groups as a church, and then we're not having Bible study, and then we're not in the world because we have our church basketball and we have our church, pickleball, we have our church, whatever, instead of being out in the world. And so that becomes problematic. And I think this is ultimately what I'm getting to. A lot of times that's happening, and we say we're doing that because people aren't that interested in Jesus or the Bible, but the truth is we're not that interested in Jesus or the Bible.
Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think if we're willing to take that step to invite,
Yeah, and so if we're not centering it around Christ and the Word, it can become that.
Yeah, I believe you. I agree.
And Satan would be totally cool with that.
Yeah, he would like, keep doing stuff because what difference
does it make?
If you
know me, you know I do fun things.
That's
Come
right.
on,
That's
this person wasn't. No,
they were asking legitimately because it is. It is.
But I could have probably been more clear, Justin.
Yeah, I think we all can be more clear about things at times, especially on Boggy.
I mean, you sent me that email in all caps and said you should have been more clear about
that's
this.
That's right. All right. So, hey, that's all the questions we got. If you've got questions for us, let us know. We'd be happy. All right. Come on.
My game idea.
Come on, game.
Okay. By the way, that was a lot of generated content from you, the people.
Thank you.
It was great.
Keep it up.
We think. So
keep it up.
So keep bringing us content. So, So I think over the next several weeks, months, however long this keeps going, we're going to start doing a series of Mount Rushmores.
Mount Rushmore.
So in case you're not aware of what Mount Rushmore is, I've never been there, but it's like this stone carving, right, with 4 presidents.
Are there people out there who don't know Mount Rushmore? I guess some of our international listeners.
Roosevelt, Lincoln.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Washington.
I agree with those 3.
And another 4th. It's not both Roosevelts, is it?
I've said it again. I have no idea.
Wow. Okay. Anyway, that's terrible.
I mean, Google has made us dumber.
Thomas Jefferson?
I don't remember.
Okay. We know it's G-Dub. We know it's Abraham Lincoln. We know it's one of the Roosevelts. That's terrible.
Great leaders, leaders of our nation.
Yes. Right. The 4th is up for so let's go a guess and let's find this out. So my guess will be both the Roosevelts. What's your guess? The 4th.
I'll go with Jefferson. There you go. You said
Franklin and Jefferson or Teddy?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure Teddy's on there.
I have no idea. I'm telling you, I have no idea because I can't even guess right now.
So if we were to do a Mount Rushmore with 4 faces, we're going to do that. So in light of this week's big announcement of Saban's retirement.
Nick Saban retiring from the I've got some Alabama friends who are sad. As a Georgia fan, I'm not sad, but I have high respect for him as a coach. So,
the Gators were just so irrelevant right now. It's
you're like, hey, whatever.
Somebody was like, but who's going to take down Bama? And I said, Florida in 9 years.
That's right.
So if there is even college football in 9 years. So anyway. Okay. So we're going to do a college football themed Mount Rushmore. So I got 4 different Mount Rushmores here. The first is who would be the Mount Rushmore of college coaches, the best 4 college coaches. You want me to go first or you?
I'll go because I think everyone knows that you probably know more about sports than I do.
You also have 5.
Well,
you can't have
no.
You cannot have 5.
One is an asterisk because I think he deserves a mention, but he can't go on the mountain. So, and that's Joe Paterno. He can't go on the mountain. Ooh. He can't go on the mountain because of what happened at Penn State. But he's all-time winningest coach, more wins than there you go. So he can't go on the mountain. So he's not one of mine.
Fine.
All right. So
you can mention him. All right. Let's hear your 4.
All right. I'm going with Bobby Bowden.
Okay.
Bear Bryant, Mac Brown, Nick Saban.
Wow.
I do believe Nick Saban
Mack
deserves.
Brown?
Yeah, he had a great run there at Texas. So in the 90s, 2000, whatever, he was there.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean,
He's got a
it's
great
hard to
name,
remember besides this year, which I really think they were way overrated as a Georgia fan. But Texas has been irrelevant for a while, so it's hard to remember. They know that season they had a long stretch and he was winning. So
I actually share 3 of your 4. Nick Saban. I think he's probably the greatest of all time, honestly.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, you have to acknowledge that.
Yeah, Bear Bryant. So another 2 Alabama. Bobby Bowden. I mean, just how long that was.
Yeah.
And the coaching tree. And as a Christian, he led Mark Richt to the Lord.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, so that
great
not why he
leader
was on there, but
and listen, there, Florida State in the '90s and early 2000s, and I personally am glad they've come back, but
not me.
I mean, you're a Florida fan, but I remember being in Atlanta and kind of grew up as a Georgia Tech fan as well because of being in Atlanta, you were scared. It wasn't just oh no, we're playing Florida State. You were scared for your team to play Florida State then.
They had a lot of talent that came through. And then my last one would be Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
So he was a coach of Miami back in the Michael Irvin days, and so
remember when Miami was good.
And had he stayed in college, I mean, he would have been dominant for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I'll go Jimmy Johnson.
All right. So the next thing you sent was college players. So
I went by season, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, not
season.
Whole of career.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
it's
On this one, I went whole of career.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I didn't give you directions.
Herschel Walker. I mean, so I will
say,
of course. I mean,
of course,
he's made some questionable choices later in life, but I think as a Georgia fan, you have to acknowledge this guy, just incredible talent. And also, I will say it's pretty unfair because when we think of the college players, because the stats get so high for these running backs and quarterbacks, I'm sure there's defensive players who are equivalently as good.
Yeah, you're right.
You can't remember them. Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
Bo Jackson. Can you, argue that he's probably one of the best athletes that's ever played?
Yeah.
And then Archie Griffin.
Okay.
All right. And Jim Brown. So I will admit I did some research and analysis on this.
Wow, I'm impressed. So I have to confess, I went with guys who were either still in the NFL after everything I'm doing is modern. From now
so
on.
Stetson Bennett, obviously. Just kidding.
Yeah. Has he started the Chevrolet dealership?
I think that
Stetson Bennett Chevrolet. That sounds like a dealership.
It's going to be.
So Tim Tebow.
Yeah,
that year, his sophomore year.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
And his junior year, when he shouldn't have won the Heisman, but he led the team national championship. And his senior year was a great year,
I would agree with you.
So, college player, not a great NFL player.
Yeah.
And shameless plug for the Tim Tebow Foundation, Night to Shine, coming up here on February 9th.
That's right.
So he's doing a lot of good with his life.
So thanks, Tim. Thanks for listening.
And then Herschel Walker, who I didn't really get to see, but there were a lot of highlights when I was young. And
we got to meet him.
He was intimidating
recently.
presence.
We met him a few years ago. He was here in Niceville for one of the sports banquets. And so we got to go, which was really cool. Yeah, he was super nice.
Then Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Because, and then we're talking about single season year. The best year I've ever seen is Cam Newton when he was at Auburn.
Yeah,
he was dominant. And he single-handedly got the national championship.
100%.
They had a great running back, too, but
I agree with that.
Yeah, Gus Malzahn has made so many millions off of Cam Newton.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy how some coaches, it's they succeeded as a coach because they're an amazing coach. And then some coaches, they succeeded because they just had some great players. So, there you go.
It's like me at flag football. It's the personnel. It's the personnel.
All right. So, the Mount Rushmore of college teams. So, in this one, I did do a little bit more of a year by year.
Did you go by season?
So I do have a top 4, probably a historical, but I do have by seasons.
Okay, that's what I did. I meant to say that, this specific team. So let's
this specific team or season. Okay, so I'm gonna say, and these are not really in order.
By the way, some of our audience is super engaged,
and they're like, I don't care about college football.
Others are totally
but we care. Yeah. So I'm gonna go.
That's why we save this for the end.
So you can say this is because I'm biased, and I will say, yep. You're right, but the 2021 Georgia Bulldog team, they 25 players in the NFL. You got Trayvon Walker, George Pickens, Darnell Washington.
If we're allowed to have an honorable mention, they were mine.
Yeah,
I almost put them on there just because defensive. I mean,
defense. I mean, you can't even. Yeah, just dude. It was.
They
wild.
were just and so dominant, right? Has a team really been that dominant?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. Yeah,
they didn't lose.
Yeah, it was just amazing. Yeah. So to prove that not all my choices are biased, I will include in this list 2017 Alabama.
Okay,
when you've got Jalen Hurst, Tua, and Mac Jones is your 1, 2, and 3 quarterback.
Well, Mac Jones,
but at the time, but but you've got those guys.
Didn't he end up winning the Heisman?
I think he did, yeah. But that's the season that they came back against Georgia because Jalen started as quarterback, and then Tua came in, and also to see those two, like it wasn't like they were proud of each other. Like they were like, hey, we won. And then you have so many other people. 41. I did a little research on this, so this is not off the top of my head. 41 of those players went on to the NFL. That's pretty incredible. I think the LSU team, when Joe Burrow won the 2019, I remember watching that game thinking, man, that's just an all around. I mean, yeah, Joe Burrow shouldered it, but they had a great team. And then also the Miami 2001 Miami team, 38 of those players went to the NFL.
Yeah, that was
honorable mention to a USC team with Reggie Bush.
That was probably the most talented team.
Yeah, there you go.
Team. Man, I'm impressed with that. So no particular order. I'm going to go with the LSU team that you mentioned. Man, that could be the best team ever. I mean, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase.
Yeah, just so
Joe
many
Burrow.
people. Yeah, I mean, unreal. I mean, it's almost unfair.
It was unfair. Yeah, and they were dominant.
Yeah.
So
speaking of coaches who did well because of the team players more than their coaching was Ed.
The next team would be the 95 and 96 Nebraska team. If you remember Tommy Frazier and Lawrence Phillips, they ran all over Florida in the national championship.
Again, I kind of forget about Nebraska because they've not been good for so long now, even though historically they've been
on that. Yeah, he was a good coach.
Good coach.
And then the 04-05 USC team.
Yep.
That was, I mean, they were just dominant, man. You know, and that actually, it's been vacated. So they're not.
That's right. I forgot. Okay, so they're off my. They're not honorable mention anymore.
No, they're on there. Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. And then last would be 09 Bama. That was when they had like Mark Ingram and remember Florida was like so good. Yeah. And then they just trounced Florida in the SEC championship and rolled in the national championship. So that'd be mine. Lots of good teams.
Yeah. All right. So Mount Rushmore of our college football memories.
Okay.
So first the first time Georgia won the national championship.
How old were you?
Well, I know I'm not that. I don't remember that one.
Oh,
I was like a baby.
Yeah.
No, but I'm saying when they won their first, like just recently.
Okay.
Not when I thought you were talking about
because it had been
since I was 80.
80.
Yeah, I was like a 1. So, so I don't remember that, but it was just it was just.
That's why I was like, dang, you're older than I thought.
No. I don't remember that.
You're like Kelly Hefner's dad's age or something.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's really funny.
Okay.
The next is last season when Georgia won, also the national championship. But the game before that, when they kicked the winning field goal at midnight. Oh, I mean, literally.
Oh, yeah, New Year's Eve.
That was just, you have to admit, unless you're an OSU fan, you have to admit that was pretty magical that like the 10-9, the countdown's happening as they won the game. And
that was wild.
That was wild. I remember going to a Georgia Tech game with my brothers and my dad when I was in college. And that was just fun because it's just a fun memory. And then also I remember watching a Georgia Tech game when I was younger and my younger brother who, if some of you've met my younger brother, who's just a big guy, he's just it's just funny to even picture this, but he got really upset that Georgia Tech came back and scored a touchdown, and I remember him like running away crying. Yeah, and it's just really funny, and I will never forget that memory.
That's good. That's
there
good.
There you go. All right.
Okay. Yeah. Florida winning the 97 national championship, so 96 season.
Yeah.
Danny Werfel, quarterback. Yeah. They had been beat by LSU during the FSU during the season. And they got to play them again in the Sugar Bowl and killed them and ended up being the number one team. That. And a lot of teams had to lose. It really
was
felt
like a domino effect.
Because remember, Danny Werfel was such a strong believer. It was almost like God was on his side. You know, back then I probably believed that. So anyway, next would be that I know is against your team. But when Tua came in for Jalen Hurts.
That was amazing. I mean, he's a freshman. It stings, but it also is amazing.
That was unbelievable.
Yeah, I agree.
That was unbelievable.
It really was.
I mean,
I remember watching it thinking, this is unbelievable.
Right before that, right?
Yeah.
That was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable. I'm still salty.
And then the next two have stories behind them. So, and the D is really, it's kind of cheating. But a couple years ago, 2019, actually, I was able to get season tickets for the Gators because somebody was out of the country and didn't want to lose their seat. So they already paid their donation. So they sold their tickets at face value. I sold 2 of the games and then took each of my kids at the time
that's
to
sweet.
one of the games. Yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of driving.
That was a lot of driving.
I can't do late. I can't do a Saturday game and come back anymore.
No, we're getting old.
See, my last one is, so if you remember Texas and USC when Texas won the national championship, it was the best national championship game probably ever.
I do.
It was phenomenal. Maybe besides that Alabama game that I just talked about, but I actually watched it. It was a Sunday night. My wife was already, I think it was like January 8th, 2006. And so my wife was already in Jacksonville. I went to the church I was serving at that day, and I came home to our little apartment that we were about to live in together, sleeping on the couch because I didn't want to sleep in the bed before we were married. Yeah. And was watching on like a tiny box TV. And
that's so funny.
Yeah. And just watching it and thinking about.
And you about to get married.
Yeah. So.
And I won't be doing. Yeah.
And it was a great game.
That's right.
Yeah.
Anyway. That's exciting. Yeah.
So.
Well, sweet. Well, man, until next season when, there's a 12-team playoff and somebody's like, who are you cheering for in this national championship?
Get rid of the bowls.
Yeah. Somebody, because, somebody asked me who I was cheering for in the national championship game, Michigan or
Harbaugh, man.
And I was just like, I have family that's they're OSU fans, so I can't I'm just cheering for a good game and for the 12th. It was not a good game. I was like, Georgia should be playing Michigan. That would have been a great. It would have been a great game, and I think either team could have won. Michigan as a loyalist,
hats off to Michigan.
Yeah, they won. Yeah. But next season with the 12-team playoff, we all have more grounds to equally be salty and mad.
And Florida still be left out.
Yeah, probably
not
so.
left out, not make it. At all.
And one of my kids is a Florida fan, so I do cheer for them except when they play Georgia, and I try to encourage. So, all right. Well, hey, if you've got other questions, it was appropriate that we talked about the Florida Gators and suffering in the same.
That's right. Nice.
So,
nice.
But hey, if you've got real questions, send them our way. We love to talk. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to Boggy Talk. We are so glad you joined in the conversation. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a beat.